Welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the show. And most of all, thank you, Duncan, again for, first of all, writing this beautiful play that we love so much here, and for coming to Sweden and Stockholm to endure it, so to speak. We've been very nervous, of course. It's always very nervous when the playwright comes, because you want to give the play all the justice it deserves, and work hard at it, but you never know what it looked like in your head. But first of all, what made you write this play? I think if we can get that over, everything else will be much easier.
Yeah. And also, apologies, I don't speak Swedish. It's sort of ideal for me. I can watch the play and understand it, and then I hear people talking about it afterwards and have no idea what they said. I mean, that was always the case. I was approaching 30. I got engaged. We co-owned a cat together. The baby conversation was very much present in both of our subconsciousness, as it was the elephant in the room. And one night I found myself at 3 in the morning starting to write something, not being able to sleep, and I got up and I just started writing, and then the first draft of it sort of vomited out onto the laptop screen. I guess those things are all linked. I think all the anxieties that they express are all anxieties I have sympathy for. Sometimes maybe a bit, the way they articulate them are a little bit extreme. Sometimes not as extreme as I feel them at all. But I think that's what it was coming from, the idea of feeling like a grown-up for the first time really in my life, and looking at the planet that my generation was about to inherit, and thinking, what is this inheritance? It needs. My parents' generation had no idea that it was. How best to phrase this without insulting my parents?
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yes.
Destroying the world?
Yeah, I think my generation feels, certainly I feel very conscious that the world is sorry, you can tell my characters sometimes speak the way I speak. Start a thought, thinking it's heading somewhere, and it doesn't always. I'm very conscious that the world feels quite doomed, and I don't think my parents felt that way, and I feel like in that gap was the chance we had to do something about it. That's quite bleak, isn't it?
Sort of.
Yeah.
So you said before when we talked that it was kind of by accident that your play ended up in Washington. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. I'd written it. I'd written this very first draft, and I'd done a bit of work on it, and I'd sent it off to some theatres, and I didn't hear anything back from anyone. And it was about 2 years, and I gave up. And I quit writing because I thought, well, this is the best play I can write at this stage in my career, and if no one wants it, then maybe I'm no good at this, and maybe I didn't think I could. I didn't have the energy to write another play from scratch for no money, and so I gave up and I started teaching, and then I did an exchange program between the Old Vic Theatre in London and the Public Theatre in New York, and one of the young actresses I met there was doing a monologue workshop. I'm not sure how interesting this story is now, I'm telling you, with Kevin Spacey, who runs the Old Vic Theatre in London, with British plays where they were doing British accents, and she asked me if I had anything that I'd written which was in English, so she could do her English accent. And I gave her this play, and she really loved it, and gave it to a director friend of hers that lived in Washington, who ended up directing it in Washington. So it was dead. The play was no one cared about this play, or had read it, and she just gave it to a friend of hers, and he just happened to really like it, and happened to be looking for something to do, and did it in Washington. So it's very strange that it got its premiere there, but very good.
And after that, what happened?
After that, so there's an American version. It was the original. So hopefully this, I followed. I know it word for word, so I was able to. It feels like I can speak Swedish for 90 minutes, which is nice. But hopefully it feels like Swedish characters in Stockholm. It feels local to this theatre. These characters do, I hope. and the Washington production was local to Washington, and then there was a UK production which was local to London. And so there's all these different versions that exist with all these different references in them. And what was the question? Sorry.
What happened then?
Was it the Victoria's?
No. So then they did it in Sheffield, up north in England, and then it took another year for that production to come to London, and then I sort of, it was in London, and I thought, well, now it's in London, I'll get all these commissions and I can quit my teaching job, and I'll be able to live as a playwright. And so I quit my teaching job before I got the commissions, just as, and then nothing happened. And then bit by bit things started happening, basically towards the end of last year. But it was a scary leap. And now this is the first non-English language production that's happened.
And there are several coming up, I understand.
There's more coming up, which is wonderful, and it's very, if anyone's a budding playwright, I'd say write a two-hander without any set. It's a good way of getting a play.
Which countries are about to play?
It's coming on in
Denmark?
That's my agent Barry.
And Berlin, right?
Yeah,
Berlin's
Berlin,
coming up
that's
soon.
not, Katie Mitchell will do it, Schaubühne.
The Schaubühne, yeah.
The National Theatre in Helsinki are very, very interested, and I think
Fantastic.
they'll do it.
Good.
And Iceland, we have a group there which will do it. And we had a reading in Denmark, which was too funny, I think. I want to cry. I didn't cry there. And they will probably do a tour all over whole Denmark.
Yeah.
That's
And
good.
Holland and Australia and
Good.
lots of places in America, I think, and which is really very strange to think it's out there, sort of walking around on its own.
So then, after Lungs, Duncan has had great success just recently with an adaptation of 1984.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah,
That's
that's
another
a really.
one
It's been.
with a happy ending. It's
Well, it sort of does, 1984. Everyone remembers, apparently ours is the first adaptation of 1984 which incorporates the appendix. I don't know if anyone's finished the book. Many people who I know who've read it didn't read the appendix, which actually sort of is a happy ending. Everyone remembers O'Brien saying to Winston, if you want to know what the future looks like, imagine a boot stomping on a human face. That's what everyone remembers as the ending. And then the appendix puts the party in past tense, and old speaker survived, new speak failed, and the party fell. So it sort of is a happy ending. So we've done that, but ours is the first adaptation to incorporate that, apparently. But Orwell said it was that the appendix was essential to the book, so we've made it essential to our production.
Anyway, this production has had amazing reviews, absolutely amazing reviews, and from what I
Yeah.
understand, it may actually move.
Yeah, it's going to London, which is good. It's very strange getting very, very good reviews. It makes me very paranoid. I don't know what they want from me.
Well, you stay until Saturday, and we'll get you out.
Oh,
Are you, Anders, are you about to say something? No, you just look that way. Okay. So, what made you start writing in the first place?
You asked me that question earlier. and
I know,
answered
I
for
thought
you,
I
didn't
gave you some preparation time.
Yeah, what can I say? I think I wanted to be an actor originally, and then sort of realised I was terrible at it. And then I wanted to be a director and still do bits of directing. But when I was at university, I started writing, and it was mostly, I didn't realise people still wrote plays. I was brought up going to see lots of Shakespeare and Ibsen and Chekhov and falling in love with those, and then I found out living people still wrote plays. I thought all playwrights were dead, and then it turns out a lot of them are still alive. And it was in the sort of early mid-90s and watching plays by Sarah Kane and Mark Ravenhill and those guys that I realised people still wrote plays, and that seemed really extraordinary to me. So when I was at university, I was reading these play text, and I didn't get to see the performances, and I didn't get to see the original productions, and I didn't get to see how they were directed and how they were designed, but I got to read them and have a relationship with these texts, and I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. I want to be, you know, I want to have my name on the front cover of one of these books or something like that. And then reading plays like Pinter and Carol Churchill and Martin Crimp, and just thinking, I want to steal all their ideas and make them my own. I just, after university, I started collecting courses, just playwriting courses, one after the other. And then I did they do a couple of courses at the Royal Court Theatre, or they used to. And I wrote my first play while I was on that course, and that went on in a little pub theatre, and then I carried on.
So looking 5 years from now, what?
Yeah,
Yes?
I would like to ask you a question about the plays. And I regard it as a generational play. It's a special age group, like your age group, and there's a constant theme. It is they have an anxiety about not being good enough. I don't know how many times they said it, perhaps over 20 times something, are we good, or we are good. And, so how do you define what is it to be good, so to say, in your opinion? I mean, do you think that this generation really has this anxiety of being good, or?
Gosh, that's an enormous question. I do. Yeah,
Yeah, you do it personally. A few people do, but do they do it generally, so to say? Or?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's my generation. I think of as the writers I know and are contemporaneous with me in the UK. People like Mike Bartlett. I don't know if you know that, or Lucy Kirkwood, or James Graham, or. And this is something we talk about personally. And certainly with the question of propagating a species, whether or not to have children or not, what influence am I on that person? Are my genes particularly special enough to add another person to the world when there are other people in need of a home? I mean, maybe I shouldn't talk about Mike's work, but there is a struggle of identity in a very different way than there was in the 60s and 70s, when it was about breaking down certain barriers or putting ourselves in categories. And now I think there's an anxiety about whether those categories are particularly helpful, and is it possible to straddle various categories? Is it possible to be I don't know, I'm now realising how little sleep I got last night. I don't know how to answer that question other than say I struggle with whether or not I'm a good person and what it is to be a good person. I mean, living in the West, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, the planet would be better off if I wasn't in it. And that's quite a difficult thing to get my head around. I really want to be a good person in the world, but no matter what I do, my sheer existence is damaging everyone else on the planet, particularly in the third world.
Yeah, I think this...
More champagne, anyway.
No, what I think is that questioning this about having children, or abstaining from having children, and that the earth is overpopulated is, in many countries, taboo. And I could think in the United States it's going to be played in many places there. So I think you will get quite negative reactions.
What were the reactions in the United States? Since it's been playing a lot there and you've been present, was there a different reaction to it than you felt from comparing it to the UK reaction of the audience?
I mean, it depends. I mean, the population thing I think is really important. And Berit mentioned Katie Mitchell's production, the Schaubühne, which is going to have an LED ticking clock of the population clock, an up-to-the-minute population clock. We're at 8 billion now, and we're approaching, no, just over 7 billion, and we'll approach 10 billion in my lifetime easily. and the strain on resources is going to be enormous. But that is a big part of the play, but it's also sort of a love story, and I think that it certainly in the American productions I've seen, the love story has been the dominant thing, and then the rest of it has been the theme. Whereas for Katie, the theme is the thing, and the love story she has very little interest in. And that's sort of completely fine, or every way. I got both very clearly in this production. I was very aware of, I was very touched by the love story and engaged by that, but I was very clear on their dilemma. And yet, it is completely absurd. It's absurd. It's absurd that you can be talking about whether or not you want to become a father and the Industrial Revolution in the same sentence. But this is, I mean, it is ridiculous, but that is the reality of where we're at.
Yeah, there's another aspect, and
that is
entitlement of having children, which is very, very much alive in every country, and the NHS is problematic because it costs too much. You know that you could choose your own time. You know, I'm having a child, and then you can abort it. You know, and the next year you can say, you know, I can't get a child now.
I'm going to interrupt you. Sorry,
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, but
the
I do need to hear if anyone else has any questions.
Yes.
First question, why is there so much anger? Second question, is there a point in trying to intellectualize feelings, emotions?
We have a shrink in the audience.
Q&A, isn't it? What is goodness, and is there a point in intellectualizing emotion? Why is there so much anger in the play? That's a good question. I guess that's how anxiety manifests itself in my brain, often. I think, and I'm now married to a very angry woman. That's where she goes. She'd be quite happy with that definition, I think. And I think the way my anxiety, I have both the anxieties that are manifest in these characters. I think the impulse to say something before I've formed it in my brain, that I work out how I'm feeling about something and how I think about something by hearing the words come out of my face, and then editing them and immediately backtracking, and I have the anxiety that is manifest in her character, which is that completely able to talk too quickly and have these thoughts which are deep in my subconscious, and then I find very ugly to hear out loud, and they're damaging to say out loud. And I also have his thing of really genuinely not knowing how to feel at any given moment, and trying to second guess how she's going to feel about something, or how I'm going to feel about something, and having so I guess how I am usually, unless I'm sat on a chair, the lights pointing at me, I'm very quiet, but I have her in a monologue. I just wouldn't say it out loud because I'm not a sociopath. Which is fair, actually, the characters. I think these are things that we say in private to each other, but we wouldn't dare say in public. At least that's how I live my life anyway. That doesn't really answer your question, first question about anger, but the second one is, is there any point in articulating emotions or intellectualizing emotions? Well, I don't know what else I'd do with my time. That's what I sort of feel like I was brought up as a very liberal, left-leaning person, and a lot of the decisions I make in my life, when you carry them through to a final endpoint, get towards being quite fascist, actually. And a lot of the opinions I secretly have, particularly when it comes down to my family and my livelihood, and whether I want to have a child or not, and my place in the world. I want to be really, as I was saying before, I want to be a good thing in the world. But actually, the more I think about my own influence, it's incredibly selfish and makes me feel very uncomfortable. I think that friction point where I start to feel very uncomfortable is an interesting thing to dramatise, because I don't know the answers to any of it. And I certainly wouldn't want to have written this play to try to preach or to try and explain or provide answers about what we should do. It's much more, can I articulate my anxieties in a form where I can give them to you people and you can work it all out. That's more healthy for me to think about.
I would like to ask something.
Could you swap the characters?
We did that a little bit, yeah. In the first read through, she was much crueler to him, and all the feedback was that people really hated her character because she was so vile to him. So we swapped over anything that wasn't gender specific, and all the feedback was we really hate her character because she just puts up with all this stuff he says to her. So, and that's maybe a very British reaction to it, if I can generalise. But there was something. There's something troubling about how we judge female characters, particularly female characters who have opinions and voice those opinions. Voicing the opinions, I think all female characters have opinions, but very rarely voice them. And that was really troubling to me. So yeah, a lot of things got swapped and a lot of things got left. I'm not sure if I got the balance of sympathies right, but tonight it felt very, very balanced. I sort of loved both of them, and wanted to shake both of them by the collar at the same time. Yeah. Barry.
Yes. First of all, I would like to thank the actors for a brilliant performance. You were fantastic. I mean, to keep the floor for 1 hour and a half, like the way you did, and through Callan's wonderful version. Great, it was great. Then I think it's very nice of me to ask, but sometimes I've got the feeling that the way of acting can cover a play and not open it. We saw it in Denmark, it was a reading, and the audience was laughing all the time, and I was so irritated because I had read the play, and now I know how wonderful it was, how serious it was, but they were in such a hurry to be entertaining. And I think they could do the same in the US, because they have another attitude to the text and to the audience. So do you think that this performance have more came more clues to your truth, to your intention of the play? Don't tell anybody. I mean, this is private.
Yes, I do. I think it was written as. I really love actors. I really love actors. I mean, part of the reason. I stopped wanting to be an actor when I realised I wasn't very good at it. It's also just watching what actors can do. They're like another animal to me. It's something I just couldn't achieve. And I wanted to write something that would be really hard for actors to do. But in doing something that hard, hopefully you get something really special. It's a challenge and a gift at the same time. Hopefully it will live and it will be fun. I don't know if the actors are enjoying it yet, but hopefully it will be something that will be. It sort of inevitably has to be different every night because they're acting very fast, if that's a possible thing to do. They're making so many decisions from moment to moment. Every second they're making decisions, and they're responding to the tiniest nuance of how someone's delivering something. So it has to keep living and breathing, and each night, excuse the pun, but it has to, each night will be inevitably different in different moments. And that's part of it. And this, yes, to compare it to the Danish reading, yeah, no, it felt much more lived in and much more accurate, and tonally much more compelling and sad and funny.
Good job there. Colin as well.
Do you feel like a natural, you feel naturally kin with Strindberg and Bergman?
Was that a serious question?
I mean, I love Strindberg and Bergman. Would you? I mean, is there anything in this play where you were thinking there was allusions to them, or that they?
Well, I can feel I can certainly feel an atmosphere from them, but nothing else.
Quarreling. De grälar hela tiden.
Yeah.
They keep fighting over things.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yes,
Kevin!
Kevin. Hi.
This is the Welshman.
Yes, this is the Welshman.
This is not really a question, more of a sort of an observation. That this play, it works very well in Sweden because it's a part of Stockholm, Södermalm, the south area, where everybody's like this, two people.
We pointed.
We pointed
You remember we said that's
yeah.
where they were living.
Yeah. I had the same conversation with my wife about the environment, and she's telling me you can't do this, you can't do that. I mean, it's so right for Sweden and so right for Stockholm, or a certain part of Stockholm. It's great.
Good.
It's a feel at home.
Good.
Yes, I mean that's always something that we're trying to do, is find material in New York or in Great Britain that transfers somehow. We certainly felt immediately when we found this play, which is sort of ironic. We found this play on an airplane flying to New York, polluting and killing everyone.
Yeah.
But we certainly felt when we read it immediately that this is a play that really is about us here in Sweden and Stockholm. Everywhere else, Anders.
Someone just left it on the airplane. It sounds like you just picked it up.
Yeah, we picked it up and it says lungs, and that's weird. Oh, this is about a doctor must have left this.
That's a better story. It's found on
Yeah. Well, the discussion about genetics and when it all comes down to the smallest part of being human, and you talk about genes, and it's like can't get any smaller or more detailed. When I read this play the first time, I read it, and then I talked to Carl, who's the director, he sits here, and what comes to me, in a way, always when I read a play, I ask myself, I'm not religious, religious, but the existence of a God, or not thinking of there is a God, and there's nothing said about a God in this play, as I can remember or recall that I say, or the woman, but they talk about the genes, and then you talk about, like, the genes are the value of a human person. You come down to the human value, and when you take God or religion out of people's existence, you come into this world where genes is God. And that's also a side question, just playing in the States, where the society is more religious than things are in Europe, or many places in Europe, except Poland.
Is there eventually a question?
Yeah. The question is, what have you?
Did I consciously kill
Yeah.
God?
What? When did you choose not to mention God or religion in your play, in this play?
Yes, I think I did, and I think that's partly because it would be easy for them to abdicate responsibility to God, and because there's a rule book where it would they could refer to, and it would tell them what to do.
Yeah.
And I quite like the feeling.
Isn't that the same thing with the genes? Isn't that also a rule book? They come down to that.
Yes,
like you say.
It is. Yeah.
You shouldn't be existing if you went down to the genes rule book.
Yeah.
As your human values.
Yes, I don't know how conscious it was, but I quite like the way that they debate scientific evidence in a secular way, in the way that more religious people would debate the teachings of the Bible. That they're able to take a single point and argue both points until they find the version that allows them to do the thing that they want to do anyway.
Yeah.
And that seems more pertinent to my life. Particularly, Britain's a very secular country, so it's, the the religious narrative isn't as dominant in this kind of particularly with this kind of couple.
No.
Also, I quite like the idea that they're sort of not exactly parentless because they refer to their parents, but that they don't know that far back, and they're quite new, and they're just finding themselves in this situation, and they have to go by what evidence they can find. But that they both very much read and trust in the scientific method, I think is very much the decision, rather than removing God from their relationship.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have an appendix in your play, which we haven't seen yet, where the child actually saves the world? Comes up with a solution how to fix all the damage we've done?
There isn't an appendix, no. It's a funny ending, isn't it? Because it's sort of, I'm really happy for them when they decide to be together, and I think it's brilliant that he finally comes through and knows exactly what to say at exactly the right moment. And then and then dies about 30 seconds later. We race through time, and everything's covered in dust, and she's alone, and we know something horrible has happened. But I think that's sort of that's at least how I felt when I wrote it. That's the more accurate end point.
But may I ask Carl then?
Yeah.
The last scene, you have this light coming from heaven.
Yeah.
It's like a comfort. The last.
Yeah.
I think so. It's a light that comes up and comforts her when she is at his grave.
Yeah.
So
I think it is a hopeful play
yes.
that says that we can't know what happens, but we have to have some sort of hope. I don't know, but we can't just lie down and die. We have to, I don't know, hope and have a sort of belief, not in God but in human.
Yeah.
The human.
I agree with that.
Yeah. In one way, it's also when I read it for the first time as a psychologist, it's just, my God, this is kind of Darwinistic play. In a way that once they got this child, after debating it and quarreling and getting together and separating, they have their kid, and he's the one to put the generations further away. Produce new people. And after that is done, as you say, 30 seconds and I'm off stage, dead. I've done my work on this planet. I produce another person, and that's what made me feel like, in a fun way, because that's how things are. The lust, why is my lust so hard? so big to make it with this woman? Is it just lust, or what is making me feel wanted to make a child? And is it programmed or genuine? What is genuine? Or genuine feeling? What is a genuine feeling? And what is love? What is love?
I think these are all good questions.
Those are all good questions.
But the man over here that wonders, is there a point in intellectualizing emotions?
Yeah.
Yes.
You kind of were, I don't know if I got my point straight, but intellectualizing sex life maybe is a bit more proper. Whether you have a point in trying to point out that today generations really overdo it to some extent. Run into trouble.
Yeah,
but
there's some things you can overthink.
You stating that you are trying to describe something you feel is genuinely something different from earlier on in history. In a way, I feel that you're describing something that has existed already before, in a sense. Recalling an early generation being terrified by an atomic war and the final destruction. I guess you will, going back in history, find tons of these situations where people are actually...
I think every generation's probably felt that they were living at the end of days.
Sort of.
But I think ours is the first generation that can definitively see the end of the species, and it's not necessarily in our lifetime. It probably isn't in our lifetime. and it's just too far to focus on. But we pretty much know definitively that there is an end point, and that unless someone miraculous comes along and puts silver nitrate in the ocean and reflects the light, well, it comes up with some solution that isn't that, because we know that that doesn't work. But
Otherwise, this would have been a great night.
yeah, I've got it.
I also think actually there is a difference, because if I compare just to when we were kids, I didn't feel as a kid that I had a responsibility. I knew there was a threat, but it wasn't on me as my responsibility. But when I look at my children, they are constantly aware. Like they would say, är jag miljöbov nu? Är jag miljöhjälte? Vi måste släcka lampan. Sorry for speaking Swedish, but they're asking questions about, am I a good person or am I a bad person if I don't turn out the light or if I turn on the light? And I think that responsibility, the feeling of, and they are small, and that kind of feeling that I contribute to this world's existing or not existing, that I think is a difference in
That's a good person. Yes, they are aware what they are doing.
Yeah.
It's, but I think you're right. It's like intellectualizing sex. There's some things that you can overthink, but and I think they probably go too far. But I'm sort of amazed how little this conversation is genuinely happening. It's sort of the conversation they have about the planet is the conversation that, if our species is saved, that's the conversation that should be happening, and it isn't really.
Okay, so last question, anyone, before we wrap this up and go home?
Okay, good.
Well, then, thank you
so much.